What's going on, sports fans? We will continue the fantasy football tech talk on the 15th of May right here. Getting into our third player of the day, continuing with the theme of the NFC North as we've covered a little Packers, a little Lions. Now we're going to move on to the Chicago Bears and who they have as their running back this season. So you ready to talk some David Montgomery, young man?
I am. Let's get after it. I kind of have the feeling that you think the Bears, the Bears are going to be better this year.
I think they could be better this year. They were definitely a disappointment last season to a lot of people, right?
I mean, yeah, one of the biggest disappointments in football.
No doubt about it, guys. Speaking of disappointments, that's me being disappointed I can't play DFS or Overlay Fantasy Sports right now, guys. They are the show sponsor. Give them a look-see. I know if you're watching it on the 15th of May that clearly there isn't any contest up right now, but we will get sports back someday, and if you are watching this closer to the football season, it should be up and ready to go.
Yeah. I feel like people are watching it, but the one thing that's good about these videos, which you've talked about, is these are the shelf life for these ones at least lasts a few months. Normally our videos are done in a day.
Yeah, or hours even. Sometimes it's not even close to a day, right? It goes by real quick. That's why I like when my son's like, your videos only get like 1,000 views. Like I watch videos where they get millions. I'm like, one, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, two, we have a shelf life on our videos of like 6 hours usually. Then after that, they're done. And there's only a few thousand people who really play what we're interested in anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a bit of a difference between 1 million views and a couple thousand. So, yeah.
That crap kids watch on YouTube. Anyways, guys, help me impress my son. Subscribe to our channel. Thumbs up is always appreciated. As far as the Bears offense goes this season, there are reasons to be encouraged. This is the third year under Matt Nagy. From what I see, it looks like they're bringing in a new offensive coordinator by the name of Bill Lazor. I'm not going to pretend like I know a lot about him. But offense wasn't too great last year, so I can't assume this is going to make them worse.
Yeah, I mean, how could it make it worse, right? Listen, do you think that Nick Foles is going to be the guy, or how do you think this plays out?
I think that there's a saying that you love, which is perception is reality, and the perception in Chicago is Mitch Trubisky sucks, and Nick Foles will now be the guy.
Okay. I can't disagree with that.
Dude needs a new home, right?
I mean, I don't know. He might not be an NFL quarterback.
Again, that's extremely possible. I won't argue with you on that one at all. He's also a guy, like when you watch him, occasionally you see flashes, and you think it's possible if he went somewhere else, he could have a better career. He's never going to be Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson. And those are the guys that were the Bears didn't pick and got him instead. So he's never going to be loved in Chicago, minus like some sort of freakish turnaround. So I think a fresh start would be good for him. And I think for the Bears, that's why Nick Foles is there right now.
You know who he reminds me of talent-wise? Like, he reminds me, I don't even know, I was going to say he might be a little bit better. I'm not sure. Tim Tebow.
Yeah, where he's athletic, maybe not the most accurate thrower of the football.
Like, Trubisky's a good athlete, but he just doesn't seem to be a great quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a possibility. So, again, I'm operating under the assumption that Nick Foles will be the quarterback. That's not a for sure thing. It sounds like it is, quote unquote, an open competition. But I'm pretty sure that he will be the starting quarterback. And he brings leadership to this, which could be good for the Bears offense. Nick Foles will never be confused with Patrick Mahomes as well. But he is a Super Bowl champion. He is a leader. He's a guy that teammates seem to galvanize and get ready to play for. Obviously, things did not work out in Jacksonville, so this is no slam dunk like that either. But we're here to talk about David Montgomery, who from an efficiency standpoint left a lot on the field his rookie season. He was able to tote the rock over 240 times, just under 900 total yards. He scored 6 times. He was involved in the receiving game with 25 receptions. I think he is great potential value where he's being projected to go in draft so far this year because he's a guy who's going to get a monster workload, and he is talented, and he could easily have a better year.
No doubt about that. He's also not a guy I think it's going to catch a lot of balls, though. So he's not a guy like I love, but I get your point that like people are sour on him from last year, so you're going to get him at a value this year. If you're on the premise that the Bears are going to be better with Nick Foles as their quarterback, their offense is going to be better. Why wouldn't you like the pieces of their offense a little bit more? And outside of Allen Robinson, he's their top piece.
Yeah, I mean, you watched this kid in college, right? I mean, from everything I've heard, the kid can play.
He's good. He's not like Saquon. He's good though. He's solid. He can be a good NFL back, and he is one of those guys that I think can wear down a D, and he has a nose for the end zone.
Yeah, and again, 25 catches last year, 242 rushing attempts. I mean, they gave him every opportunity to have the ball, get the ball in space. You don't have anybody behind him either to run the football, really. This isn't a situation where the number 2 running back behind him is going to eat up a lot of carries. Tariq Cohen is a fun little scat back who will take away from him a little bit in the receiving game. But as far as being like a bell cow type of running back, he's one of the last guys that you can draft who is going to get every opportunity to get all of the work, or at least the vast majority of the work in the running game.
That's a good point. And you also like that he's not one of these guys that it's old and might be done. I mean, he's not old and he might not be done.
Exactly. Year 2, 22 years old.
Exactly. So I like that point.
All right. So what did the Bears offense do in the offseason? They made subtle upgrades at the tight end position. Now, we've been really hard on Jimmy Graham here, so let's not act like he's a difference maker, but it's not like the Bears had a lot of great things going on at tight end. Trey Burton never really worked out. They took a second-round draft pick on this kid, Cole Kmet. Is that how you pronounce him?
Yep.
What did you think about him?
He's solid, man. I think that he's a guy that, Notre Dame has had this history of good tight ends, and I think he falls in line there. He's kind of in that Greg Olsen type of mold. I mean, I don't think I expect that much from him. And, we just saw TJ Hawkinson, we just talked about. He was a top 10 pick and didn't do much year 1. It takes tight ends a little bit longer than other positions. I don't expect much from him year 1. But Jimmy Graham, I mean, listen, this is much to do about nothing, as we've talked about with many teams. But the opportunity will be there for Graham. I think he's needed.
And they also had nothing, right? Like the Bears, they're trying to upgrade a tight end position where they've gotten almost no production out of for several seasons in a row. So, yes, Jimmy Graham and Kmet might be an upgrade, but they're not upgrading from much. They're upgrading from bottom barrel type of stuff. So I still don't even look at this as like to call this combination of tight ends mediocre, I think is nice at this point.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely like average to below average.
Agreed. So, again, they brought in Ted Ginn. Doesn't really do much for me. The only big difference is going to be probably a potential switch at starting quarterback, which is still not guaranteed. It could still be Mitch Trubisky's job, but everybody that I've read on and listened to this one, and I have listened to a few people, it sounds like it's Nick Foles' job to lose, and that perception is reality. And they just don't think Trubisky's going to work out in Chicago, so they're trying to make the move.
So, yes, I agree, but I think you'll agree with this point. If Trubisky does win the job, I'll be impressed. And I don't think that it's out of the realm for them to still be a lot better with Trubisky.
Sure, and if Trubisky wins the job, it's probably because he won it, not because Nick Foles lost it, which means that the offense might be improved.
Exactly. I don't, like you said, I think, unless Trubisky really outplays Nick Foles, I think it'll probably be Nick Foles' job. So Trubisky's going to have to really play well.
Worst case scenario would be Trubisky plays awful and Nick Foles gets hurt, and they have to rely on that, in which case I would be a little bit more soured on David Montgomery just because I wouldn't expect as much out of the offense. So I do think they have a lot of possibilities to be one, better offensively, but also a better team this year. The loss of Akeem Hicks for a good portion of last year really made things a lot harder in Khalil Mack. The defense wasn't nearly as good, and a lot of times they weren't winning these games. Now, if they're up 17-9 in the fourth quarter, they're giving the ball to David Montgomery trying to run out the clock, which could be a little bit of a different format for him.
Most definitely. I mean, the Bears were good not so long ago, 2 years ago. I mean, with that awesome defense, Khalil Mack. I don't feel like they're the same team, but it wasn't that long ago. So you're right. They have definitely potential to be better. No doubt about it.
A point that you like to make is the NFL changes quickly.
Yes.
Do we know how the Bears are going to play? No, we don't. But they could change for the better this year really, really easily. It's not like when you look at, I'm trying to think again, who's like a really bad team that You just couldn't see flipping the script so quickly.
There aren't that many in the NFL. Like, that's the point.
Not right now.
Like, there just aren't, because there aren't that many great teams.
Yeah, I mean, so
2 years ago, like, the worst team was Arizona. Like, they're on the up and up. Cleveland is on the up and up. Cincinnati just had the number 1 pick. Like, all these teams, you talked about Miami, even the Jets. I mean, all these teams have reason to believe that they could be a lot better this year. Not necessarily Super Bowl contenders, but a lot better,
Okay, I am not calling for the Bears to go to the Super Bowl. But you wouldn't be surprised if they win 11-5, 12-4 this year because of what their defense you feel like they could do if they were healthy and played well. You don't really need necessarily a lot out of the offense then. And I think Nick Foles, if he plays up to his high-end type of possibility, this could be a good situation for Chicago. Again, I'm not calling for them to wreck the NFL or anything like that. But it's not like I'd be flabbergasted. We talked about the Jets a couple of weeks ago, and you're higher on them than I am. If the Jets are 12-4 this year, I'm surprised by that. You wouldn't be as surprised. We can agree to disagree on some things. If the Bears were really good this year, it wouldn't flabbergast me.
So I'll say this. You had me about the Bears and the Jets at 12-4. I would be surprised if the Bears were 12-4. I would be very surprised if the Jets were 12-4.
Okay.
I don't think either of those teams are going to be 12-4. I would be less surprised if the Bears did it, but I don't expect either of these teams. I would be very surprised if the Jets did it.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how shocked would you be if the Bears were in the playoffs?
Not shocked at all. I think you're right at 11-5. I think that 12-4 mark is tough, man.
Sure, and if you want to go with 11-5, I'm on board with that. That wouldn't be a shocker for me. I think the Bears could, turn some heads this year. We've seen this in the NFL so many times, how quickly things change. A couple of injuries, and all of a sudden you have a lost season. You bring in a new quarterback, guys stay healthy, and things change.
And also, like, on the flip side of that, a couple of injuries to teams you're playing, and all of a sudden you have, like, a cupcake schedule.
Right? Like, what if all of a sudden in Minnesota, we're 3 weeks into the season, and Adam Thielen and Dalvin Cook are hurt?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not good. And they're missing Emerson Griffith, too, or something like that. Like, all of a sudden, the Vikings aren't very good. And let's say, like, things downward spiral for the Packers this year because there's mutiny in the locker room after what they did. Okay, and then all of a sudden you're looking at the Bears as a team that could easily win their division.
Weren't the Packers 6-0 in their division last year?
Yes, they were.
That's not going to happen again.
I would bet heavy money against it. No questions there, man. All right, so where is Montgomery going? I'm seeing him going anywhere from like a mid-6th round upwards to like 7th or 8th round. I think this is big-time potential value, and this is a guy that hopefully everybody forgets this by the time drafting comes around. I expect to reach for often. A guy that has the opportunity to be an RB1. And again, this is calling more for the Bears to take an upswing this year and for him to see 20 touches a game, maybe 17 to 18 rush attempts and 2 or 3 receptions. I mean, you don't have that possibility with a lot of other guys going in round 6 or 7.
No, you don't, especially if you think their offense is going to be better. I mean, I'm with it, man. I think there's definitely downside, but there's a lot of upside where he's being drafted. I'm with you. I like the call here.
Yeah, the Bears' offensive line is not going to be confused with the Dallas Cowboys from a couple of years ago. So he doesn't have that. There was some issues. I think his yards before contact was pretty poor last year, which, you can't put that on the running back unless, there's Saquon and they can make guys miss like 3 or 4 at a time. So he's not walking into a situation with like the top tier offensive line. Okay, we understand that. But you're also getting a guy, and when we talk about bell cows, guys who are going to see the vast majority of touches, you have Saquon, you have Christian McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott, but that list goes by quickly. And this is one guy who could actually get that.
Honestly, like the list, right, you just talked about is, in my opinion, McCaffrey and Saquon. Those are the only 2 guys where their offense. I don't even think so, man. Like, I think that Zeke, but Saquon and McCaffrey their whole offenses are built around them. Like, and I think that they're like by far the best players on their offense.
Sure, like they're their own tier.
Exactly. I love Zeke. He's really good, but Dallas is much better, I think, around Zeke than the other teams are.
But he's still the bell cow. He still gets almost all the touches.
He gets almost all the touches, but I think that those 2 are like the entire offenses of those teams.
Yeah, I heard somebody else say it the other day. They are their own tier of fantasy running backs, and I have zero argument with that statement.
But yeah, I'm with that.
But then after those guys, like who isn't splitting touches? You know, David Johnson will be given the opportunity to be a bell cow. We don't have a ton of faith in him, but if we're wrong and he plays well, there is legit upside to be had there because he would be a bell cow. You got nothing in places like San Francisco. I like Chris Carson, but Seattle's been trying to meander him out of that role forever. We just talked about Green Bay's lack of a number one guy. You know, we like Swift for the Lions, but if Kerryon Johnson's healthy, he's also really good. Give me a guy who's got the opportunity to have 20 touches every week, and that's just bigger upside.
No doubt about that.
Any word on Carlos Hyde going to Philly?
I saw it being rumored, but I haven't heard any. I think that would be a mistake for them. That's a guy I want to make in a video soon is Miles Sanders.
Right, because there's a lot of reasons to be high on Miles Sanders if he's getting 75% of the touches within the offense. But if you bring in Carlos Hyde, that is just a guy, you know, him and Frank Gore. I saw a funny meme on Instagram about these two guys come into your team just to ruin, you know, bell cow young fantasy running backs.
Yeah, this is the truth.
So we'll see what happens here. Again, I like the pick. I like it a lot for the potential. You know, he didn't give us a lot of reasons to be overly encouraged last year, but when you look at his year-long numbers, you're like, he did score 6 times. He did have over 20 catches. He did have over 800 yards. There's definitely room for improvement this year, but there just aren't a lot of guys who could get as many touches as he's could.
I like the call as like it's got upside for sure. I mean, if you end up with him as your RB3, I'm ecstatic, to be honest.
Yeah, your flex.
Yeah, like I'm ecstatic as an RB3 flex.
Low end RB2,
yes.
High end flex, but
with low end RB1 upside.
Yes, I mean legit RB1 upside because there's nobody there lining up to take his job. And we talk about like Nick Chubb is better than David Montgomery. I would say that, but
yes.
There ain't no Kareem Hunt behind David Montgomery this year, and you get him 5 or 6 rounds later.
Yeah, exactly. And we've talked about it. Kareem Hunt is also good, which is good for the Browns, bad for Nick Chubb fantasy.
Right? Yeah. Fantasy and real life are 2 different things. We all know this, but this is what we're talking. So, all right, man. Glad we could talk this one over. Best of luck for everybody in their fantasy football this year. But if you're in one of my leagues, let me have David Montgomery, please.
Thanks, guys. And no.